Lots of issues related to using a small unmanned aircraft system, or sUAS. Some of these issues include aerial platforms themselves, sensors, big data, applications and uses, regulations, privacy and nuisance, and lastly, liability. Today's webinar will focus solely on FAA regulations, especially as they relate to commercial users. As a note, on October 12th of 2016, Dr. Gu hosted another webinar that is still available through her website, and it focused on the release of the Part 107 regulations. Today's webinar will focus on the process to achieve remote pilot certification. Regulations are certainly the hot topic right now. Everyone is trying to figure out the new rules and what the process is like. To start with, the FAA recognizes three classes of UAS users. The first is hobby or recreational. The second is civil, or what I call commercial. And the third is public. There is no one that would deny that the regulatory situation surrounding sUAS use has been extremely chaotic. However, with the release of the permanent rules for commercial use on August 29th of 2016, things are clearly improving. For a moment, let's go back in time. Prior to August 29th, 2016, there were different pathways to fly legally, and the path depended on what type of user you were. Recreational users followed the Advisory Circular, or abbreviated AC 91-57A. Public agencies and civil users, through the FAA Modernization and Reform Act of 2012, flew using either a Certificate of Authorization, or again the acronym COA, or a 333 exemption. In fact, the permanent rules have no effect on recreational users. Recreational users follow the model aircraft regulations and are not required to have a license, but must comply with the several basic safety rules, including flying below 400 feet, flying within line of sight, no flights near airports or groups of people, never over stadiums, etc. Although I want to focus on commercial users today, I will interject that if your intended use is for educational purposes, an FAA memorandum on May 4th of last year is important to you. The document was released to clarify the FAA's position that a person may operate an unmanned aircraft or for hobby or recreation at educational institutions and community-sponsored events. When this interpretation applies, the operation would not require FAA authorization, but aircraft would fly in accordance with the model aircraft rules. So here are three helpful tips for educational users. First, suggest your materials include some kind of note. For example, this sUAS educational activity is being operated under the Educational Use of Unmanned Aircraft Systems Memorandum, May 4, 2016. Second, read the May 4th memorandum very carefully. Do not indicate in any kind of promotional information that you plan to teach stakeholders to fly an sUAS. You may use a sUAS to demonstrate certain principles, etc. And third, make sure your institution supports educational flights under this May 4th rule. They may wish you to pursue a remote pilot certification instead. But let's get back to the public and commercial users. After August 29th, you essentially have two options for flying legally. So let's focus on option number one. Option number 1 for public users would be to pursue a COA. For commercial users, to apply for a 333 waiver, which would eventually proceed to a COA. In reality, a 333 waiver is now a moot point and really just has passed and has gone to the side. Option number 2 for both types of users involves new rules, which we refer to as Part 107. I believe that for the vast majority of you, Part 107 is the path that you want to choose. You might elect to apply for a COA if your flight needs exceed what is allowed in Part 107. For example, let's say that you want to fly beyond line of sight, or you want to fly at night, or you want to fly above 400 feet. Then you might want to pursue a COA. Again, I emphasize that 99% of you will want to pursue certification through Part 107. In this webinar, I don't want to focus on the details of Part 107, which we covered in the October webinar. I will highlight 3 items, however. A flight medical exam is not required with Part 107. Number 2, you no longer take the private pilot knowledge exam. However, you now need to take a remote pilot certification exam, which is what we're going to discuss in just a few moments. For those that have never taken either exam, I can honestly tell you that the remote pilot test is far, far easier than the full exam. The FAA is not giving this certification away, but I believe the process is fair and appropriate. So, the main focus of this webinar is to acquaint you with the process to obtain remote pilot certification. And having said that, in February, we released an extension fact sheet that covers the process in detail. And the URL for this fact sheet is listed over in your chat box window. It's the second listing. Remember, the FAA considers a farmer or nurseryman, any commercial user, use of a UAS as commercial use even when the aircraft is being used on their own farm. So if you're a farmer and you're in business, that is viewed as a commercial application. In addition to the fact sheet I just mentioned, the FAA has a website that provides guidance on this topic. Let's start with what I assume is the majority of you, those of us that are not currently licensed pilots. So you don't have a private pilot's license. We're going to go over the test preparation, taking the test, and post-exam issues. So let's start with test preparation. Although the rules were just released in August, it's probably not surprising that there are already lots of resources to help you get prepared to take this test. And I've listed a few. Drone U, Drone Pilot Ground School, Remote Pilot 101, etc. I want listeners to know that my advice is based on having obtained a COA and more recently achieving remote pilot certification. So since I've been through both, I'm very familiar with the process and also what's required. So in my opinion, if you have previous experience for whatever reason with the FAA private pilot knowledge exam, my recommendation is I would recommend that you use the 2017 edition of the Gleim book and you read the free FAA Remote Pilot sUAS study guide. So you're going to combine both of these. In that case, focus on topics in the FAA guide that are not covered in Gleim book. Obviously, Gleim does not cover sUAS, So you need to get some kind of specific information, and you're going to get it from this FAA free guide. The total cost of these study materials would likely be less than $20. Now, for most of you, you have no previous experience with an FAA exam, so in my opinion, I would suggest you purchase one of the many online preparation services, and you combine that, you read Chapter 9 in the Gleim book. I would anticipate you will spend at least 30 hours preparing for this exam. So whatever time, if you take an online course, whatever that is, and then time to read and process Chapter 9. For either study preparation option, I would suggest downloading the free Airman Knowledge Testing Supplement book from the FAA. This is the exact same book that will be used in the exam. So you would be very familiar with which diagrams there are likely to test you over. Moving on, what is the process of actually taking the test? First, you will need to identify the closest testing center, and the FAA has an online guide for that. No matter where you take the test, the cost is currently $150. The test is online. Your testing station might look like something in this photograph. You would have a computer monitor, a keyboard, a blank pad of paper, a pencil, and the supplement book, which I just referred to. The calculator visible in this photograph was something that I provided, and again, they will not provide you with a calculator. You can bring one. They also have an online calculator in a drop-down menu. The test consists of 60 multiple-choice questions, and you have 2 hours to take. Now, just a cautionary statement, 3 or 4 of us that have taken this test in the last 2 months had 63 or 64 questions, and what we've learned is that the FAA is testing future questions. Now, they don't tell you which ones are being graded and which ones are not, but it was kind of concerning to me when I got to the 60th and I pushed advance, and then I had 3 more questions. I wasn't prepared for that, but so I'm not sure if this is a permanent situation or was just here in the early stages. And your test results are provided to you immediately following the test. To pass, you need a score of 70% or higher. Now, after you've taken the exam, post-exam, once you have achieved a passing score, you need to do one more thing, which is to initiate an account in what's called, the acronym is ICRA, Integrated Airman Certification and Rating Application. Your test report will indicate your score. That's the test report that your paper copy that you're given at the testing site, and they'll indicate in that it's going to be uploaded to ICRA within 24 to 48 hours. So when you open your account here, it's possible, if you've waited at least 2 or 3 days, that you can simply access your score as a part of the application process. Your test report will indicate your score, which will be uploaded again within 24 to 48 hours. You could have initiated an account in ICRA before you took the test. This has been a question from a number of people. Why couldn't I have opened this before I took the test? And you certainly can. To me, it just seemed more logical to do this after you pass the test. Registering in ICRA is fairly easy, and I would say it will take you about 15 minutes. And there is currently no cost to this part of the process. There are 4 sections to the process, and they're shown here on the screen. There's a section on personal information, so you're going to fill out your name, address, etc. Supplementary data, a section on basis of issuance, and then something called review and submit. The only section that I found confusing or tricky was in section 4. where you review and submit. At some point in the process, you're going to be faced with the page shown here where it says View the Pilot's Bill of Rights. It's a tab over here about in the middle on the left-hand side. Once you open that, you will be allowed, you open that and read that. You will then be allowed to make an electronic signature and close the process. So once you complete the application, you will receive a temporary certificate. So at the very end, you'll have an opportunity to print out just a temporary certificate. Your application will then be vetted by the TSA, and I would expect at least 2 months, 2 to 3 months before you receive your permanent certificate, which looks very much like a driver's license. Now, if you already hold a pilot certificate, so private or commercial, you simply need to complete a free online course, and you need to complete the form that is shown, which needs to be signed by an appropriate authority. This process is very quick. Again, remember that all of what has been discussed today is outlined in greater detail in the extension fact sheet link, which is in your chat box. What we have focused on up till now has been the remote pilot certification. Before closing, I want to emphasize that no matter whether you are flying for recreational, public, or commercial purposes, you must register your aircraft with the FAA. They now have a very easy and fast online process for this, and the fee is currently $5. And with that, I'll take any questions.